Hello and good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you, the good and wonderful people of the tube. Hope you're well today, hope you're feeling grand and all is well in your world. Hello everybody. Today's video, everybody, we're doing a comparison video between my, well, not really new, but newer Marshall JCM 900 cab and my 1968 Marshall cab. The reason for this video is basically I really want to show you how different modern speakers are to old speakers. Now, what I'm going to do, we're going to use this MG head, and I'm just going to basically run it on OD1 with the gain all the way up and no EQ, because that's about as bright as I want this amp to be through this cab. But you'll find when I go from this cab to the 68 Marshall cab how much darker that cab is, and I will have to turn the middle up to brighten it if I want it to sound like this one. And this is the thing, is like, you know, there was a reason that, like, back in the day, people like Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, Ritchie Blackmore, people like that, they could get away with cranking their EQ on there, apart from bass. A lot of those guys didn't really crank up the bass dial, apart from Eric on his Bluesbreaker combo. But I don't think he used it live. I don't think he used bass a lot live with Cream. It doesn't sound like it. Anyway, but there was a reason these guys could actually kind of wind their EQ up. It's because the old speakers, the old Greenback Celestions, they're a lot darker in their voice. And this is something I found very early on. Being a lucky bugger and working in the vintage guitar shop, Old Hat Guitars, I got to play through a lot of old vintage Marshall cabs and a lot of old vintage Marshall heads. And I found very quickly that when you ran a vintage Marshall head through a modern day cab, like say, like something like this, or like even a JCM 800 cab from the 80s, they sounded quite bright. They were very bright, and they kind of had a lot of high end and treble. And to basically get the sound that I wanted, I had to turn all the EQ off. Whereas if I run that same vintage Marshall through an old cab, we had quite a few old cabs. We had like a mint condition one that sounded stunning, and a few others with the original Greenback Celestions in. You had to turn the EQ up. You had to get that EQ, especially the mid-range and the presence, high. You had to turn that up. Bass, not so much. You know, if you found out very rapidly, you know, with these old things, like if you turned the bass up, they would flub out. There's a reason that a lot of people like Ritchie Blackmore say they never touched the bass, the dial, but just left it off. You know, because the speakers being so dark from the get-go, you just didn't need it. You know, it would just gets in the way of the bass guitar frequencies and all of the low frequencies, and just basically you get lost. So I want to show that today. Also, another thing, PeelTube, is like this. I did a video recently for Andertons. I don't know if it'll be out by the time this video goes out, so I'm not going to say exactly what it is. But I was using a Marshall Studio vintage head, the Plexi head, the small 20-25 watt head, the same one I've got. I forget the wattage of it exactly. But I was using that for a modern day Marshall AX cab. It's the one with the checkerboard grill cloth. I used to have one of them, actually. I sold it because I hated it. I found it way too harsh. And this one I used at Andertons was no exception to that. And basically, to get the sound I was after, which is a vintage classic Marshall tone, I had to run the EQ on 0. And everyone in the room was like, well, it sounds like whatever. No pun intended on that one. But I can't believe the EQ's all at 0. And the thing is, like, you know, when I run my Studio Vintage through my old Marshall cab, I have to use the EQ. I have to turn it up. But if I run it through this cab or that cab or any of the other cabs I've got, I have to turn the EQ off to get the sound I want. And like I say, this is a video I've wanted to do for a long time, just to show you the difference between. So what we're going to do, we're going to mic up the top left speaker on each cab. So this speaker is going to be mic'd, and my 68 Marshall cab is going to be mic'd as well. My 68 Marshall cab actually has a replacement 71 speaker here. So that one there, that one there, that one there, they're the original 68s, and that's a replacement from 1971, where obviously the original blue, they took it to Marshall and they shoved another one in. So we're going to be miking up the original 68 because the 71 is a little bit brighter. It's not like these three. Anyway, inside this cab we have Celestion G1275s. They're the 75 watt speaker. In all fairness, these are my favourite speakers of all time and space. Just because they just have the right sound for me, and I like the headroom in them. They don't break up. The speakers downstairs in the 68 cab, they do break up fairly rapidly. These ones don't. They stay clean for a lot longer. But it doesn't matter about that today because we're going to simulate that using a distortion channel anyway, so that doesn't really matter. Like I say, we're going to use the Marshall MG here. We're going to run the gain flat out. So gain is going to be on 10. OD1. Bass, middle, treble. What was that called? Contour. I've scratched it off on this amp. Are going to be on 0. I'm going to have that volume, channel volume all the way up on 10. I'm going to put reverb at 9 o'clock. I'm going to put the volume about 1.5, so it's going to be about 8 o'clock, and that's the way I'm going to run it here, and I'm going to run it downstairs. We're going to be miking up with a Shure SM58 today. I'm really enjoying the SM58 recently for miking up guitar cabs. There's just something about, I don't know, it's just a little bit different, and there's something about it that I'm really enjoying recently, so I'm going to stick with the 58. So, no pedals. No pedals, we're just going to go straight into the amp. No whiffle waffle or anything like that. So, there's been plenty of that. But yeah, so like I said, I really want to show you how dark these old speakers are. And I really hope this comes across okay on the camera, people at YouTube, because it's very interesting to hear the difference. And again, there was a reason why people like Jimmy and Eric and Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, they could get their amps cranked and crank up the EQ on their amps, because these speakers were a lot darker. They had to do it, otherwise it'd just be a dull, nothing-y raw sound. So anyway, that's enough, definitely enough waffle. Let's get a guitar, plug in, and let you hear this. There you go, that's the two sound examples. You can clearly hear, and again, like I said, I didn't change the EQ. It's the same amp, same EQ, same microphone, same guitar lead, same plectrum, you know, same mic lead, same camera, you know, it's all the same thing. You can hear the difference though. Like I say, the EQ again on the MG was gain all the way up on OD1, no bass, no mid, no treble, no contour. Channel volume was all the way up. Reverb was at 9 o'clock. And I had volume actually about 1 because 1.5 was too loud. So I had volume on 1. And again, I didn't change the settings. I didn't change, it wasn't different mics. It wasn't different guitar. It wasn't different guitar lead, different mic lead. Everything was the same. The only thing that was different was the speaker cab. And again, it's mad the difference. I just had to listen back, and again, it does sound like the 68's underwater. For me to get that to sound bright, I have to start turning the EQ up. There's no way I can play through that amp without turning the EQ up. It just sounds, even for me, that's too dark and dull. It just sounds like it's underwater and there's a blanket over it in the Mariana Trench. It's that deep down. But it's really, really dull sounding. And again, it's something I've wanted to do for a while, and it's something I've wanted to show for a while, this, because even modern reproductions of vintage speakers, greenbacks, 25 watt greenbacks, stuff like that, they don't sound like the old ones. And you know, they just don't have that. And again, I've played through some mint condition Marshall cabs that have never been played through. You know, we had one in Old Hat. We had a 50 watt Marshall small box head and a 4x12 cab with its original roller greenback Celestians, and it had never been used. Funny enough, actually, Peter Frampton wanted to buy it from us, but that's a different story altogether. Emailing Peter Frampton was a weird experience, but he wanted to buy it from us because it was like literally pristine. We had it in a flight case and everything. And I think I've got a video of it somewhere actually on this channel. I don't actually know where it'd be, but I do have a video of it somewhere. But that thing had never been used, and it was exactly the same. Really dark sounding. The cab was super dark. The speakers were just dark, should I say. So it's kind of like, it's not a case of, oh, they're just old speakers and they've worn in, because those had never been used. You know what I mean? Like, this guy had bought that amp and basically never used it. It just kind of sat in its covers forever in his house. Until he unfortunately passed away, and again, Norman from Old Hat eventually acquired it, got it into a flight case, and basically stored it. You know, it's a museum piece, absolute museum piece. Hence why it was in the museum at Old Hat. And again, it had just never been used. So it wasn't a case of like those speakers had been worn in or anything like that. They weren't. You know, they were as new. And the 68 reminds me of it. You know, that 68 cab has been used a lot. But those speakers, they're still as dark. I mean, this cab, I've had this cab since, crikey, 2010, probably. I think I bought this cab in 2010. Yeah, it would have been 2010 because I got rid of I had a 2x12 Marshall cab, which I didn't like as much, and eventually I sold the 2x12 and I got this cab, and I bought it for £100 back in the day, and that's mental. And I bought, £100. I got the B cab for 150, which I shouldn't have sold, but did. But it's okay. I have another one now. Thank gravy lords, and it's a good one. Anyway, but yeah, I've had that since 2010, and again, this cab I've used extensively for gigging, recording, video use, you name it. It came with me to France, you know, it's travelled all the way, and it's still way brighter. These speakers are extremely well worn in now, and they still don't sound as dark as the original 68 ones I've got downstairs. Another thing to note as well, people too, I mic'd in the exact same spot as I always do. It's kind of like but where the dust cover is, I kind of mic just off to the right side of it. So I mic'd them both in the exact same space as well. The dust cover on the 68s is a lot smaller. The dust cover on the 75s is about so big. The dust cover on the G12s is probably the 68 speakers is probably about that big. But I mic'd it in the exact same place, you know, and technically the 68's actually closer to the centre, which means it should make it brighter, and it was still really dark. Anyway, I wanted to do a quick video on this, people, because it's something I really want to bring to attention of, like, you know, these old cabs, they sound a certain way, and reproductions just, they don't the reproduction speakers, they don't quite capture the darkness that these old speakers had, these Roller Celestion speakers. Like I say, I had a Marshall AX cab, and I played through one recently at Anderton's, and I was just like, that is nothing like an original old cab. They don't sound right. They're too bright and brash, and to get the sound, get those classic Marshall tones, you have to turn all the EQ off, because these tones you hear are not as bright as they appear. You know, it's not all treble. It's not. But and again, you want to be careful you're hearing anyway with treble, because it's dangerous. Anyway, that's why I tend to keep away from it. But anyway, regardless of that, hope this video has been somewhat informative. It's just a little quick one where I wanted to show the difference between new speakers and old speakers and how much different they sound. Because, you know, I've tried all sorts of new modern speakers, vintage 30s, you know, the Greenback 25 watts, the 70s, 65 watt speakers. They all sound pretty much similar to the G1275s. Slightly different in some respects, but also different brands as well, like, you know, the Fender speakers and all sorts of... yes, I can't think of the name right now. But they're never as dark as the old... you know, 60s Celestions. They're just not. There's something in those old speakers that make them very, very dark, and you have to really kind of like, you know, work the EQ on the amp to get them to sing, basically. Otherwise, it's just like... Anyway, that's enough waffle. I hope you enjoyed this video, YouTube. I hope it's been somewhat informative. Like I say, I didn't change anything. I didn't change the EQ on the amp. I didn't mess with anything. This is just literally as scientific as I can get. On that kind of thing. I just really wanted you to see and hear the difference, because it is a mad difference. And again, I wanted to do this video for a while and I've finally done it, so I'm really happy about that, because it's been something I've wanted to do since I got that cab in 2020, just to show you the difference. I really wanted to do it when I was in Old Hat, actually, weirdly enough. I wanted to do a video then, the difference between old cabs and new cabs, and I think I just never got round to it, unfortunately, and you know, that was 2014. So, I like to get on things straight away. But in all fairness, I didn't have a vintage Marshall cab at that time. So, you know, what could I do? Anyway, regardless of that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's been informative and somewhat interesting to hear the difference as well. I've got another shootout video coming next. And then the video after that, we're going to revisit an amp, which I always knew was good, but it's took me a long time to find a good one. And you'll see that anyway on Friday. But next video we're going to do a shootout. And the next video shootout is that I'm really curious. And I don't want to tell you what it is, because that would give it away and make it too easy. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this vid. If you like the channel, like the videos I do here on the channel, please consider becoming a patron at Patreon. Link to that in the description box below. Other than that, I was linked to my music as well. Other than that, I'll see you again. Have a great morning, afternoon, good evening, and goodbye now. Thank you for watching.